Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Storyboard, the storytelling talk show. My name is Cameron Evesque Davis, the host. Each week on this show, I will be bringing on a guest from the artistic community of various mediums to talk about themselves, their artistic projects, and what stories are speaking to them lately. In the second part of the show, we will be playing the game of Storyboard, a storytelling game for 2 players that was created for this show. By the end of that, we will have created a story skeleton together, and we hope you enjoyed watching us create it. Without further ado, welcome to Storyboard. And welcome back. My guest today, or for this week, is Eli Kurtz. Eli Kurtz, him, is a game designer, player, podcaster, and freelance cartographer. He's the host of the Jianghu Hustle podcast, where they watch wuxia and wuxia-adjacent films with a mind to design a new game from what they learn. You can find Eli's game design work on DriveThruRPG and Itch under the imprint The Mythic Gazetteer. All those are in the YouTube description. And welcome to the show, Eli. You are now live.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here. How's it going, Cameron?
It's going all right, given the state of things. Yeah. In fact, for this interview portion, I think for the foreseeable future, the first question I have is just, how are you doing?
Things have been better. Yeah. Things aren't terrible. I'm actually using this as a chance to get involved with some local organizing and activism work. So that's been fulfilling, if also plenty nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And then I think everybody is probably dealing with at least occasional bouts of dread and anxiety. And that's certainly true of me too, but I'm lucky to have a very supportive partner, and it's been manageable, I think, for the most part.
Yeah. There was that Dan Sheehan who is the man behind the Twitter Not a Wolf. He posted, yes, everybody has been going through these like periods of time where you feel perfectly fine, and then there's those days where you're in the hell zone, where you just feel terrible and out of it and in a sort of funk for a while. And then your hell zone never lines up with anybody else's hell zone, so it's all this it's a mess.
We all suffer alone.
You suffer alone, and it's this bizarre sort of feeling. But enough about that. The thing we talk about every day, even though we dread talking about it, it's super fun. I am sick of unprecedented times.
Yeah, no kidding.
But so in your introduction, we talked, or I mentioned your podcast. Which, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Jianghu Hustle.
Okay.
I too use an Americanized pronunciation of it. I don't do the authentic Chinese pronunciation, but Jianghu is just fine. Jianghu Hustle is a podcast that I've been doing for 2 years, and it's been a lot of fun. Maybe over 2 years, 2.5
wow.
at this point.
That's a decent amount of time to actually have a consistent product.
Yeah. We're lucky that there are a lot of viable movies to watch out there.
That's for sure.
Both good quality and not so good.
Yes, it's a very popular medium across the world, so that does work out. Now, about wuxia. Wuxia, yes, I am pronouncing it correctly. Thank you for the pronunciation guide. I definitely would have said wuxia. But so could you describe wuxia for those who don't know, including myself? I have a vague understanding of what it actually describes, but
Sure, yeah. So probably the most recognizable wuxia film for most people is going to be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or maybe Hero, or maybe even House of Flying Daggers or something like that. It's
super over the top.
Yeah, well, so wuxia is maybe sort of like a middle ground, right? You've got the purely almost historical martial arts stories, like Once Upon a Time in China with Jet Li, and Ip Man with Donnie Yen. And then you've got the like super over the top, almost more Dragon Ball Z style called shansha,
right,
which is a genre where the protagonists are trying to sort of like transcend their humanity into another state of being and spirituality. And wuxia is sort of the sandwich between, or the sandwich meat between those two loaves, right? You've got a fundamentally realistic world. Oftentimes wuxia is based on historical settings, the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty in particular, and a lot of sort of national or international conflicts often play a part, especially with, you know, Mongol invaders or what have you. And it's a story about a world where the prevailing order is corrupt or ineffectual somehow. And so you've got these protagonists who are sort of fulfilling and sort of transgressing the Confucian culture of their times by striking out as individuals instead of sticking strictly with their family ties, and forming alliances and bonds of friendship and that sort of thing, and rivalries and all sorts of stuff. So like my favorite wuxia movie is called Iron Monkey. It's a movie that came out in 1993, I want to say, and it's basically like wuxia Robin Hood. And you'll see a lot
rob
of
from
those.
the rich, give to the poor, but martial arts.
Yeah, and that's actually a pretty strong theme. Like, because the wider world is so corrupt or ineffectual, then these protagonists who are individuals have to be the ones to provide for people in need and like vulnerable populations and that sort of thing.
Okay, so that's cool. So I have actually seen quite a few of those movies. I just had never heard the term to describe them until I knew that you did this podcast and posted about it a lot.
Right. I mean, a lot of people are going to describe them as probably kung fu movies, and that I would consider that to be sort of a subgenre, but the moniker can apply broadly.
So, I mean, the other place that I heard it was also from WOO-adjacent, was because you did a Savage Worlds role-playing setting, whatever it's called. Which was wuxia inspired, I believe, unless I'm mistaken.
Sort of, yeah. I was trying to really combine wuxia cultural notes, like that ineffective government and the need for people to rise up and be heroes, and some high-flying martial arts vibes with a Western folklore sort of setting. That book is the Blackwood Errantry Codex, available for the Savage World system, but I'm actually working on a revised edition right now for the Forged in the Dark framework. Blades in the Dark is the first example of that satellite universe of games, whatever. And this one is called Errant Deeds, Tall Tales in the Blackwood. And it sort of gets further away from the wuxia themes. There's still a little bit of that DNA in there, but this is focused much more on American tall tales and the action of building a story collaboratively with people, especially when embellishment and little white lies are a regular part of that process.
Yeah, well, that sounds awesome. I'll be sure to find that somewhere. I did enjoy the first one quite a bit. That was some good world building, and you got to do that if you're making a setting.
It's true,
and I love.
I know a lot of.
I mean, I love world building because I'm currently wearing my Welcome to the Bone Era shirt, which is the D&D campaign that I do all homebrew, because like if creating that whole world with its weird intricacies and politics and stuff is just like amazing to me. It's like drugs
for sure.
Because I can't stop my brain from doing it either. It just keeps happening, so I may as well write it down or use it for something.
Totally. Yeah, and I have come to enjoy a lot of games that present a setting that I'm supposed to play in instead of coming up with my own. But my own custom world building has always been my first and greatest love. So, and I know a lot of gamers who prefer not to either put world building into their own games, or who don't prefer games where they're given a setting to play with. And that's totally valid, of course, but I march to the beat of a different drum in that regard.
We both are different as far as that. I am one of the people who I find the idea of just playing someone else's story weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly. I've never done a D&D module, for instance. And I don't really have much of a desire to do a module. I've done like one like Starfinder module and I didn't really have as much fun, and it felt like the DM had his hands tied the whole time. Like I know there's no real set rules when you're playing a game like that. Not really. Like it says that this is what happens, but if you embellish there's no like SWAT team who is going to appear at your house to make you follow Storm King's thunder exactly. But I mean, there's nobody telling you to do that. But I just feel like when you're playing a game like that, you want to sort of follow it because they created this story, and you want to not step on the creator's toes. Even though they're not there, even though they're not paying attention. It's like, it's sort of a respect thing, at least how I consider it. So that's why I probably will always create, I'm going to try and play Star Trek Adventures, which is a hugely complicated system. It's really interesting. And I don't know how to write a Star Trek story in any way. Those blow my mind every time, and I don't know exactly how to start, but I'm going to give it a go because I think it could be an extremely fun challenge.
So my partner and I are watching through The Next Generation right now for the first time.
That's one of my favorite shows.
Exactly in the same boat. Yeah, my parents watched it when I was a kid, when it was actually like on the air, and I remember seeing a few episodes, and like I loved Data. I thought Geordi was really cool. Picard seemed like a cool guy. There were all these characters that I thought were neat, but it was just, I was way too young at the time to really enjoy it. And we're watching it now. I'm just shocked at how horny it is.
It's super horny. It's a horny show.
It is. And I had no idea when I was a kid, but like the very first or second episode is basically where everybody's just super thirsty
the first episode,
and shagging right behind the camera. And I'm like, I can't believe this is the show.
Yeah, that's where Data and Tasha fuck or something. And
yeah. It was such an eye-opener for me. So if I had to give you one piece of advice, I would be like, make the Star Trek adventure hornier
than you think. I will keep that in mind. I will make it horny, damn it. I mean, I've been playing a lot of Monster Hearts, which is a pretty horny game as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it can be done. I can figure it out. But so in the intro as well for you, you mentioned that I'm getting back to wuxia and your stuff. You mentioned that with Jianghu Hustle, you're aiming to design a new game. Could you expand on that?
Well, short answer, no, because we have been working on a game basically the whole time that we've been doing the podcast. Right. And now that the pandemic, we've actually suspended the podcast for a little while during the pandemic, just because my co-host Eric is a mailman, a letter carrier. And he is very busy and stressed about that right now.
Don't blame him.
And with the rest of the stuff going on in the world, we're just like, we do have a game that we're designing and we only have so much energy and capacity. So we're going to focus on the game right now instead of the podcast. And as a consolation prize, we're doing live movie watches. Like this coming Monday, the 25th, Memorial Day, we're going to be live tweeting Kung Fu Panda 2 for anybody who wants to join. Nice. You can check out the Jianghu Hustle Twitter account to get information there. We don't tweet from there very often, so like the most recent 3 or 4 tweets are all promotion for that, so you'll be able to find them there.
I did not put that in the YouTube description. I apologize, but I wasn't looking. I like scrounged the internet for your like stuff on Itch and your something else. There are 2 links in there that are your stuff. Sure. I think it's Jianghu Hustle and your Itch site is what I put in the
and if anybody is uncertain about how to spell that, you can go to Zap Dynamic on Twitter instead, and I've got the link to the Jianghu Hustle account in my profile, so you'll find it.
Zap Dynamic, way easier to spell.
Yeah, oddly, you wouldn't necessarily think so, but it turns out at least it's both English words. But so about this game that we're designing, we do have some really cool ideas in the works right now, but we've reached, I can't even really tell you why I can't tell you about this game.
It's not an NDA.
It's very exciting. No, it's not it's not like a formal
but
NDA, but there have been conversations. It's like, yeah, let's find out the best time to announce this, and that time, unfortunately, is not any time.
Yeah,
so
that's understandable. I talked about it last episode, but like my whole thing for this time period that we're living in is the only way I'm staying sane is by constantly creating shit. Because I've got like 8 projects that I'm doing. And I have a schedule of like weekly stuff that's happening, so I have to do it. And but that routine is what's keeping me going. So like that's
I've been finding that I'm kind of distracted lately, and so I have a bunch of projects in the work right now too, and I keep working on them, but not any one of them enough to actually make substantial progress. So it feels like I'm spinning about 40 different wheels, and none of them are actually catching on the road right now. But it's fine. I actually am very close to finishing another game project that we have been doing all this year so far. It's something that we did for the Zine Quest 2 event on Kickstarter earlier this year.
What's Zine Quest?
Zine Quest, so are you familiar with the zine?
I know what a zine is. It's a sort of mini magazine publication thingy.
Yeah. Like for those who aren't familiar, it's kind of like a pamphlet. You know, you have a printed staple bound booklet type thing that's just printer, like standard letter size printer paper that's folded in half and stapled. And Zine Quest is, for the second year in a row now, they've been doing this promotion where they're like, hey, RPG creators, making a zine is a fast way to put something out into the world. There's a whole culture of zinesters who are out there. We would like you to make your game design dreams come true by running a Kickstarter and producing a zine. And sometime last year, pretty far last year, I had this random idea that I tweeted out. There's a game called Trophy that's published by The Gauntlet and written by Jesse Ross. And it's a game where you play greedy treasure hunters who go into this horrific fantasy forest that doesn't want you there. And you are playing to fail. You know that by the time you get to the final room of what they call incursions, it's basically like a 5-scene little one-shot adventure, you will lose your sanity or turn against everybody else or just like be consumed by the forest around you. And I like that premise, but I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, you know, there are a lot of political figures who I feel are really taking greedy action right now. And I just don't understand how they can't see how eventually the world is going to rise up and say, no, you're not going to do this anymore. And then I was like, oh, that might make a fun trophy hack. And I kind of forgot about it. And then several months later, my buddy Aaron Burkett he approached me and he was like, hey, Zine Quest is coming up. You want to make a game about that?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, honestly, I don't want to write it, but I'll publish it if you want to write it.
Well, that works out.
Right. And so he was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we brought another friend, Dee Pennyway, on board to do layout. And this game is called Oligarchy. It's a game of political folly. And you play rotten bastards who are in control of the world and taking terrible, greedy, selfish actions until the world or its people rise up and say, no, absolutely not anymore, and throw you down.
That sounds really great. I think I did back that one a while ago.
Yeah.
So I have yet to. So is that finished, or are you getting there, or how's that going?
We're in the final phase, I think, at this point. It's safe to say we've finished the text. It's in the editor's hands. Cool. We have a very rough idea of how long the book is going to be once it's in layout. And then from there, we just have to wait for the editor to come back, process those changes, send it to the printers, and then ship it. And that is going to be, I think, the biggest headache of this whole thing because of the pandemic. But I've seen other people fulfilling things right now, so I know it's at least possible.
Yeah, everything's a little... it seems like everything's just a little bit slowed down. Like,
right.
I think Jacobin's actually sending out their latest mag.
Cool.
Which I subscribe to, so that's nice. And Current Affairs is even slower. The 2 magazines I go with, both socialist mags, but they're a little bit slower, and there's just nothing you can do. I think I also backed a thing called the Story Engine, which is kind of like the game that I created for this, actually, where you get a bunch of cards and you sort of put them together, and it helps you build a story. and
very cool.
But their printing is backed up or like way slowed down than what they hoped for. But at least they're actually keeping in touch with everybody, and it's not a Kickstarter that disappeared like so many others.
No kidding, though.
But that sounds awesome. I look forward to being able to play that because it's right up my alley politically and game storytelling wise. I love playing shitty people who get screwed in the...
Right. Well, I noticed that Fiasco is an influence for the game that we're playing today, and that is the same vibe. I mean, this game, Oligarchy, we've found through playtesting that it is maybe a little less traumatic than we were expecting to play these kind of people, but it is still very cathartic, and that's an intense experience. And so when we finish the game, like, we've baked some content tools into the game, and one of those content tools is a little bit of an aftercare technique where we have some questions that'll help you sort of structure your exit from these really intense stories that you're telling.
That's great.
And that's proven to be essential.
Well, so, I'm glad you put that in there. Some other people might not have thought of that. But I know of you as a person who is very sensitive to those sorts of topics in your game design as well as just your life. So
I sure do try.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary, but hard to do it when you just want to create something, and then it just slips your mind to think about that sort of thing. So you have to actually make sure to focus on doing that.
Right.
But there's lots of
tools. It's interesting. A lot of art, painting and sculpture and that sort of thing, it's sort of, there's a vibe that you want to create it independent of any critical concerns. And it's just the art standing on its own merits. But with a role-playing game, it is a art form, and it's something that is intended to be shared with others. So it does pay to be more intentional about considering what the experience will be like among other play groups.
Instead of just going, people can determine what they want from this art that I'm putting out. Because people are just actually fully in it for a role-playing game.
Right.
And you actually reach emotional states when you're playing it, as opposed to only experiencing a sort of a fourth wall version of feeling these emotions. Like, you can cry when you're watching a TV show or whatever, but it's not the same sort of visceral feeling you get from playing a role-playing game and really getting into your character. Yeah. I had a rant several years ago. I used to be way more involved with theater than I am now, and I moved basically from theater into game design. And part of the reason why was because when I was in theater performing a role, it was a really good experience for me to grapple with a character and the values of that character. And it helped to broaden my perspective about the world and the people in it. And that was helpful for me just as a human being. And like, audience members can come to a play and be really moved by what they see and think about it for days afterward. But that experience is meaningfully different from mine being in the rehearsal process and wrestling with the themes and content for 100%, weeks or months. 100%. And like, role-playing games are a really interesting combination of those for me. You are both the performer and the audience at any given time. And it is often a longer form story so that you're getting that long-term exposure to the ideas that are being presented. You are sort of both watching the movie of the game or whatever, as well as being the actor. I mean, that's what I love about them, though, because I play Monster Hearts every week, and we get to some dark, scary places sometimes, but it sort of works as a semi-therapeutic way of experiencing those feelings in a sort of safe, much safer space than if it like literally happened to you. And I love it.
I played a short Monster Hearts campaign not too long ago, last year, and it was a really good opportunity for me to sort of revisit some of the angst of my teenage years and contextualize it as an adult and understand it with that kind of distance.
Yeah, exactly. That distance is so useful, because if you it's great. Yeah, it's funny playing it. I'm playing such a like timid, nervous, weird character. And it's really been fun to experience that, because I've never been I've been weird, but not timid and shy or anything like that. So it's just been a very interesting experience, and through the lens of being a teenager. I have to say, though, all our characters are much more emotionally mature, especially when it comes to like relationships, than actual teenagers are. It's like we've all gone through all that, and we literally never want to experience that fully again. There are a lot more apologies between our characters for bad shit you do to other players than teenagers probably would have done.
Sure.
But it makes us feel safer while we're playing it, because we don't actually want to experience that thing again, but you can experience quite a lot of the angst and whatnot.
Totally. What, out of curiosity, what playbook are you
playing? Playbook as in, well, we're playing the second version. I don't know exactly.
Wait, your character. Hollow, okay. Oh yeah, we had a Hollow in our game. That's a fun playbook. It's very
interesting. My character has only been around for like 2 years in game, and she constantly takes notes about everything, and her room is like just notebooks overpiling, and she's always carrying a notebook. She was just asked out on a date and by the girl she's sort of with, and she was asked not to bring the notebook, and she freaked out. But so we've got sort of the last section of this interview. I did want to ask you the standard question for everybody on this show. What stories lately are really speaking to you? Any medium, but what stories are like really hitting it for you lately?
Yeah, so I've got 2 that I want to hit up. I already mentioned The Next Generation,
yes.
and like that is we're enjoying that a lot, but that's not either one of these 2. So first of all, I just want to give a shout out to She-Ra.
I need to get on.
I know that. Oh man, I know it closed recently, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody because I haven't finished it myself. Actually, my partner and I watched season 4 when it came out, but then we fell off like 4 or 5 episodes in. So in the past week, we've caught up on season 4 and then plowed into season 5. And this show is so good. The other day we were like, this is the movie. This is the story that I wish Captain Marvel had been. Captain Marvel had a lot of potential, but it felt to me very overproduced, and like even for a Marvel movie.
Yeah, those are
not even the worst
movies. That's it.
Right. I was entertained by Captain Marvel. I don't want to give the wrong impression here, but it wasn't even the top half of my Marvel movies. And then watching this, I'm just like, oh, ultimate cosmic power, oh, friendship, oh, being a woman, being a femme, being strange. Oh, it's so good. That's just amazing, and it's very funny. And like, there are parts that maybe don't connect with me super closely, but then again, this show is not at all for me.
Yeah, definitely not designed for sort of young, masculine presenting individuals.
Right. Like, it is a kid show, first of all, and then it's also got very queer themes, and I'm basically not queer, so like it's just like, oh, but I love it so much. Like, I can't. It's one of the shows where I'm like, I'm going to be so sad when I've watched this all the way through for the first time, and I can't experience this fresh again. Like, that's going to be too bad. But anyway, it's a very good show.
It is on my list, my never-ending list of things I need to experience. But that one is.
I hear you. And really quick, I want to take an aside. I coined a term recently on another friend's podcast. Is it okay to swear?
Yeah, we can fucking swear however much you want.
Okay, great. So I coined the term jackass movie.
Okay.
And it's a movie that like has been recommended to you so many times that the next time somebody recommends it to you, they're automatically a jackass, right? and I've got like my list of movies and shows that I need to watch are almost all jackass movies at this
Avatar:
point.
The Last Airbender is on that list for me.
Ooh. It just got on Netflix, but I'm not gonna tell you to watch it because I don't want to be a jackass. But yeah, so She-Ra is amazing, and I love everything about it, and I can't wait to see how it comes to a conclusion.
So what's the other one?
The other thing, Old Gods of Appalachia.
I think that one.
I've proselytized this podcast a lot. So they just recently finished up their first season. They've had a couple of sort of paywall protected short stories that they've been doing in between seasons, and they're gearing up to put out their second season right now. But a few of the producers, I think most of them in fact, have been laid off during the pandemic, so they've kind of had to scramble to take care of that. But it's extremely good. It is a team of people who are either current residents or were born and raised in Appalachia, and they are telling a story of cosmic horror about what happens when you delve into the mountain and pull out its black guts, and then it awakens and wants something to do with you. And it's all tied up with folk magic of Appalachian history. And like the first season mostly takes place in 1917 during a really bad mine collapse.
Wow.
And it's just extremely cool. And it treads a real fine line of darkness and horrific themes that work for me. I'm personally not a big fan of gore, and there are a lot of horror tropes that I don't particularly
much
care
on the
for.
Psychological horror side, much more
right,
or cosmic.
Yeah, and like this is certainly psychological horror, but it's also written by people who are trained social workers, cool. And it's written by people who are, not all straight white men, and so it's got a real sensitivity of perspective that I don't get in a lot of the cosmic horror stuff that I consume. And so it's very cool to see it. And I would recommend it to anybody who's a fan of any of the notes that I just
That sounds right up my alley. What was that called again?
Old Gods of Appalachia.
Old Gods of Appalachia.
It's on every podcatcher near you. I think it's also on YouTube.
Sweet.
It's audio only, but they've uploaded the audio on YouTube, and it's just ridiculously good. If you're not hooked by the first episode, then it's probably not for you, but
that sounds awesome.
It's good.
I will have to add that to my while-working playlist of things. Anyway, thank you for those recommendations, and thank you for the interview. We are going to go on a very short break. I'm also in the midst of a very minor panic attack, so I need to pace. I don't know what's going on, just, pandemic nonsense, I think. But I will be back and healthy and fine. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's just something that happens every once in a while. And we will be back in about a minute or two to play the game. See y'all later.
Excellent.
And welcome back, everybody. Back to Storyboard, the second part of the show, where we play the actual game of Storyboard. This is a game I designed. 2 players. All you need to play it is a single suit of a standard deck of playing cards, so this is 13. I've gone with spades today. Hope that's okay, Eli.
Totally.
Just not going to say, no, we need to play only with hearts. So the way Storyboard is played is we first draw a couple cards, which create 2 or just point to tables that are created for the game, which tell you what sort of character archetypes the 2 main characters in this story we're creating are. We then name them and describe them. We then draw another card for a location that's important and another card for an object that's important. And all these things will come to play in our story somewhere. We then take 3 turns each back and forth, drawing cards and referring to the events table of whatever genre we have chosen. And those events say something that happened and then ask us questions about how our characters are involved and how we got there, etc. We can place these events wherever we want. They tend to work somewhat chronologically because that's how human brains work. But you don't have to. If you get a scene that would be way better way before, you can totally put it there. We then, for our final 3 cards, it gives us a little bit of a randomness for the Climax card, which is sort of like the tilt table in Fiasco. It just adds some other element that happens that screws something up and makes it a little more dramatic. We then read through the whole story, and we've created like the basics of a beginning, middle, end storyline. So, Eli, since you are the guest, you get to choose what genre we're playing. We have teen drama, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy right now. I am adding more, but gotta write them.
Ooh, cool. So I have labored over this decision for days, to be honest with you. I'm usually such a sucker for fantasy, but I think watching so much Star Trek and She-Ra right now, I'm going to go with sci-fi.
All right, so first 2 episodes of the show are sci-fi, but that's all right. I love sci-fi.
Oh, you know what then? Maybe we should change it. Let's see here. You know what? Let's do fantasy. Okay. If we did sci-fi before and I'm really jonesing for She-Ra right now, then we need some fantasy.
All right, fantasy it is. So let me switch to this screen. For the viewers, the upper left of your screen will show our characters, locations, and all the events, and I will be able to zoom in to show you that screen, and so you don't have to read the tiny text. But that is so that you can follow along as we play. The table to the left here, left of me, and in the bottom left of the screen will show the cards that I'm drawing. That's just for aesthetics. It's like you're not looking at that. It's just to make sure I'm not cheating, I guess. And upper right is obviously Eli. Lower right is me for the main gaming screen. So we first have to shuffle these cards, which I am doing. It's only 13, though, so it's not really that random. Plus, like, it's already random as far as this story is concerned.
Right. I have no idea where it's going to go.
Let me scroll down to the fantasy characters section. Here we go.
It's all part of the magic for the live studio
Exactly.
audience.
First card, this will be your character, your sort of piloting. Although it is good to be noted, you don't always have to only pilot. Like, you can bring in the other character whenever the events happen. It's not like set in stone because this is more of a storytelling game than a role-playing game. Mm-hmm. So the first card is a 2 of spades. The evil sorcerer.
Cool.
All right. So character 1 is going to be the evil sorcerer. Do you have a name for your I can't spell sorcerer. Let's come up with a name for your evil sorcerer.
I'm going to go with Vero. Like 0 with
nice.
a V.
Vero. Oh, I hadn't played the music. I do actually have music that we play in the background.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
There we go. Now we've got some loots that you can't hear, but the people at home can.
I can hear them in my imagination.
Exactly. All right, so we've got Vero, the evil sorcerer. And now for my character. Whoop. Queen of Spades, which is...
Oh, dang.
The Thief.
Yeah. This is exciting. It's immediately giving me like Sword and Sandals vibes.
Sword and Sandals. I've not heard of that. Is that a specific sort of?
It's like Conan the Barbarian and that sort of thing.
So my thief's name is going to be Axel.
Axel, yeah.
Axel the thief. So we've got Axel, and we've got the evil sorcerer Vero. Do you have any ideas of how those people could be somewhat connected in any way?
Let's see. So I think first of all, Vero's pronouns are probably he, him, and I think a connection between the two of them. If it's a thief, my knee jerk is that the thief is infiltrating, but then I'm like, what if the sorcerer had need
hire
to
him?
hire
I like hiring him as well. And I think Axel is also a guy for this one. He, him. Cool. But yeah, so Axel is hired by Vero for some reason, and we'll get into that more once we do the events, of course. Next is the locations. Fantasy locations are here. And I am drawing a 10 of spades, which is the lake.
The lake, okay.
There's plenty of ways the lake could be dramatic. Mm-hmm. Good place to drown someone.
It immediately made me think of, what is it, Lagos, the rune?
Yes, I think. I should know my runes. I'm literally Norse pagan. but I forget them all the time because I mainly use certain ones, you see. But all right, so the lake is some important place in this story that we're creating. And finally, objects. Switch over to that. All right. That is a 9 of spades, which is a history book, but not the history we know.
Oh. Okay.
Now, that can be interpreted a few ways. I think the way that I had originally designed that and written it was that it's like, it could be, for instance, the correct history, and something's messed with everybody's memories, or if it's the history or all the king, the evil king or whatever, has expunged a bunch of shit from historical documents or something like that. But we can obviously...
It's the Apocrypha.
Yeah. So all right. So we've got the evil sorcerer Vero, who is, for some reason, hiring the thief, Axel. One location that will be important in our story is a lake, or the lake, perhaps. And then an object that is important to the story is a history book, but not the history that we know.
Yeah.
So would you like to start with events, or should I?
I can go first. Yeah, that's fine.
Let me bring up the events here. Whoop. All right. So, first event draw of the game is a 4 of spades. Which is, you both are suddenly on an adventure together. Do you get along? What causes tension between you?
Suddenly on an adventure together. Okay, and so right now what I do is sort of expand on this prompt and use the characters and objects and events that we've got so far to contextualize what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this is something that happens early on in our story. And I think that the evil sorcerer Vero didn't necessarily seek out or approach this thief, but they found themselves in circumstances where they had to team up. I'm imagining the sorcerer at work in his lab, researching some sort of horrendous evil. And then the thief shows up and is about to steal something. Sorcerer catches the thief, and before the sorcerer can exact bloody vengeance, they're beset upon by some team of do-gooders who have tried to root out the sorcerer.
A do-gooder team. How about, do we want to have a hero who's like, what if we're writing a story like Breaking Bad and everybody's bad? And so we've got perhaps maybe a hero group, like an Adventurers Guild type thing. Can we create a name for that?
I think if we're like, the name of the group could
or
be...
a hero, like the main person.
I think Mayra, Maera, would be a cool name for this hero or heroine, as the case may be.
Let's go with heroine, I think.
Sure.
Is how'd you spell that?
Maera.
Mayra. All right. It's Mayra. We are seeing this story from Vero and Axel's point of view, I think. But it's very clear after a while that Mayra is like the real hero. But we, of course, want to feel for our main characters.
Of course.
So cool.
Yeah.
So he's researching some horrendous evil, and Axel is like, I'm going to get my hands on something in that place because I know evil sorcerer stuff sells for a lot. But is caught by Vero because Vero's like magical security system is extremely good. But while they're sort of arguing and Vero is about to like do something bad to Axel, maybe like the sorcerer's complex is sort of besieged-ish by Mayra and her group. So that's...
Yeah. I like that. And so then, just to make sure that all the questions get answered here, do you get along? What causes tension between you? I think we are on this adventure together. We don't particularly get along. And the tension is because you tried to break into my tower.
That seems reasonable. It's because Axel tried to steal something. Yeah.
Right.
Steal from Vera. Yeah. All right. That's great. So next is mine. I drew a 7 of spades, which is you find yourselves lost. Where did you get lost? Did you cause it, or did something beyond you intervene? I have a good idea for that one. So in order to try and get away from Mayra, Vero is like, come with me. We'll even though I don't like you and I hate that you're here, what we'll do is we'll use, I was researching right before you got here ways to reach these other planes of existence. And it may not be fully set up, but we have to, because otherwise Mayra and her people are going to come down on us. My like security can handle it, but I don't want us caught in the crossfire sort of thing. So they use this magic, but it's like untested and not great. So they stand on this portal. It starts crackling like the teleporter in Half-Life 2 that doesn't work because of the head crab. So it starts like blowing up, and they blip out of existence and appear in this other plane in like a creepy, weird forest of dead trees with strange sounds. All the trees are like purple and the grass is black. And they're in this just in weird place. And Vero says, well, this isn't what I expected. So, yeah.
Immediately whips out a notebook and starts scribbling something
exactly. down. Vero takes Axel into a not quite ready yet plane shifting portal pad. That's what I got. And they teleport so they can get away from Mayra.
Yeah, that sounds rad. And so we're in this forest now. It's our fault, but imprecision is really to blame.
Exactly.
Cool.
Vero starts taking notes. Cool.
Yeah, and I think I want to revise something here. Taking out a notebook and scribbling stuff down is maybe a little more wizardy in my mind. So I'm thinking instead that like Vero can go into a kind of half trance where he's kind of recording things into his bones and blood. He just needs to split his attention to be able to do it. So he's kind of listlessly moving through
I like that a lot. So that's what we got. Vero takes Axel to get away from Mayra. They teleport to this other plane of existence, and it's not exactly what they were expecting. So currently they are lost. I'm not sure if there were any other questions. Who caused it or did something? Yeah. So who caused it is Vero, but
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next is yours is 6 of spades, which is the monarch has summoned both of you. Now this is interesting because we can place it wherever. But it could also be the monarch of where we're at. The monarch has summoned both of you. Yeah. Is it for the same reason or not? What are the reasons?
I like the idea that this is taking place toward the end of the story. And we are back from the main adventure, and we've both been summoned for the same reason, which is to account for what has happened. For some reason, this has drawn the attention of the monarch of the realm. And so I think there is some sort of calamity that was connected to our actions, whether or not we caused it. And we're being summoned to answer for this.
Yeah. So what sort of calamity? I think what's springing first ahead is like there's like a diseased or a mystical problem that comes from Vero's use of this untested spell, and it's like keeps spreading while they're off like in some other place, and we keep flipping back to Mayra and them trying to deal with it and saving people heroically.
Sure. So like maybe the exact calamity is unknown and we're holding off for like a different card draw to find out exactly what went wrong, but we know at least that the botched portal is partially responsible. I like that. Cool.
All right. Coolio. So that's what we got there. Just want to show that. And then for my go, I got a jack. And this is a ball is coming up. You're both involved in some way. How and who is hosting said ball? Now I'm going to bring back some like weird Feywild shit. Because it seems like sort of a court of fairies style place that we've arrived, but like maybe it can be let's not make it fairies because that's so done. Let's make it like demons. we're in demon realm of some weird demon realm, and we are instantly sort of found as we get there. God, just let me type, please. Why is this happening to me? Fucking, oh my god, it's not letting me do anything.
Do you want me to type stuff over here?
I got it. All right. Okay, cool. So as we are there, we are instantly sort of beset upon by some like very fancily dressed, behorned people. So we are beset upon by some horned individuals in fancy dress. The first thing they say, is like, "Oh, you're here for the ball. Follow me." And like who just shows up is immediately invited to this like weird demon ball. And they're led through this forest on this sort of winding path, and they eventually see this just towering castle that doesn't make sense, like it's upside down or something. There's weirdness to it. There's sort of these massive flame torches, beziers all around, and it starts sort of becoming hot, and they look all around it, and there's just the forest is keeping its distance from this massive castle. And so they're led inside, and they immediately hear this very strange music, and the ball is there. How they are both involved is they are invitees. And it is, so this is where we get to experience whatever the hell this is. And it could possibly be connected with the calamity thing as well. So they are asked or told, "You're here for the ball then." And led to this strange, massive, upside-down-ish castle. Castle.
I love the imagery that the forest is keeping its distance from this castle. There's something bad, something repulsive.
There is strange music and lots of other horned individuals.
Cool.
Cool. So next is yours. 5 of spades. I don't know why I keep saying of spades. Doesn't really matter. One of you has a secret. What is it, and how does it affect the other character?
Ooh, I want to put this after being summoned by the monarch. Okay. So something happened at this ball.
Yeah.
One of you has a secret. What is it, and how does it affect the other character? I think the secret is that Axel has noticed that tiny details about Vero are shifting.
Ooh.
And it first started during the ball, and it has since turned into, like, now that we're being summoned to the monarch, Axel can tell that these changes are building towards some sort of critical mass. And Vero will undergo some sort of huge transformation, but it's not clear right now if that's going to be for Vero's benefit or not.
Okay, so it's Axel who has the secret because Axel has actually noticed the change. I feel like Vero hasn't noticed it at all. And if this were a film, we'd see like tiny makeup changes and things on Vero's body, like different sort of weird sort of just blacknesses or something that appear, and different things like that. His eyes look sort of more gaunt and that sort of thing.
And I'm imagining eventually part of this is that whatever is happening is creating a dead angle for Vero so that Vero cannot be aware of it unless somebody points it out, and nobody's done that yet. But it's to the point now where like maybe occasionally there's a little bit of a static glitch that happens on Vero's face or someplace that Vero can't see just by looking, right?
I love that. Somewhere where he can't see. Awesome. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My go. I wish I had an assistant. All right. The King. Ooh, this is good for the calamity stuff. Strange dreams have racked the minds of the people, including both of you. What kind of dreams, and what do they portend? Oop, that's a typo. Oh well. So, strange dreams, I think they're gripping the mind of the people outside. So these aren't the demons having strange dreams.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like ever since Vero and Axel disappeared, and Mayra and her people did actually manage to storm the tower, they were sort of the patient zero of the weirdnesses and the dreams. So something happened to Mayra and her people, and they started having bad dreams, and then their family started having bad dreams, and they started getting sort of sick. So it's more like a sickness. I'm doing a sickness during a pandemic. Whatever. They started having these bizarre sort of dreams, and these dreams are constantly showing all the trees dying and becoming purple and that sort of thing. Because all I can think of is some parts of that demon realm are coming to this side.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And this goes back to the reason why we're being summoned by the monarch, potentially.
Yes, exactly. So whatever calamity is happening somehow due to them. So after Mayra and her people stormed Vero's tower, they started having bad dreams showing all the trees dying. And turning.
Can I suggest a name?
Of which?
For the dreams, or for like the affliction.
Sure.
I was thinking of the forest at first, and you said that these trees were dead, but I was like, what if the trees, the phrase Sphinx of Black Quartz, that it's a sentence that uses
all
every
the letters,
letter in the alphabet. Right. I love of black quartz. And so I was like, maybe it's a forest of black quartz. But then I was like, if people are having dreams about this forest propagating, then maybe these are the dreams of black quartz.
I like it. So the affliction is called the dreams of black quartz. That's wonderful. So that is what's heading through, and we sometimes flip back. I think if this were a movie, we'd be flipping back to the mainland, and it's them dealing with this strange terribleness and people trying to get to the bottom of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's actually, so currently that is actually all of the turns in this game.
Okay.
So the way that we can do it is once we do we can fix some things up here at the end, and once we do the climax card, we can really fit everything together, and see what's actually going on. Because I have a few ideas about what the demons are doing. So it is the climax card. Whoop. Switching to that. See, if I had an assistant, I could just like switch to. Or I could have them switch between these things and type in everything.
Totally.
All right, so I'm going to shuffle these again, even though it doesn't matter.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
3 of spades.
3.
That's a good one. Somebody develops a conscience.
Yeah, no kidding. That's cool. All right.
So I think it has to be Vero.
I am evil after all.
Yes, it's in the name. So I think Vero develops a conscience in some way. So I think this is after they get back. Eventually Axel has to point out, because maybe they became sort of close because they spent a weird long amount of time in the demon realm. Like time didn't work the same way. So they actually spent a huge amount of time there and became not friends, but they became sort of, they respected each other because they were the only two humans or human adjacent individuals in this place, and they had to deal with all this terrible demon shit. So Axel eventually tells Vero that like he noticed that something's going on with you. Like I've been noticing these weird changes and these glitches that are happening on your face. So I mean, so that is a thing, and maybe the affliction that Vero has is he is actually going to die from this thing, and that his death will be the final, like the straw that breaks the camel's back on fully letting the demon realm come through. And I like to think that there's also like a main demon who is like the first one through the gates, and he's been planning this thing, and he like infected Vero somehow, like, welcome to our thing, and you're welcome here, and obviously I'm not evil, but really I'm infecting you to come through eventually. And
totally. Yeah, so like my body is the conduit that's going to become the portal for the demons to come through, and it will kill me. And this whole affliction that's been in me that Axel noticed is the symptoms of that coming out.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to say if it's developing a conscience, then Vero like has to like ward it off and kill himself to stop it.
Yeah.
He knows, he like figures out through his trance and everything, he's done enough like research while they were in the demon realm that he remembered perfectly, that he's just got this perfect magic memory. And through this trance, he has figured it out. After Axel tells him, he's like, I knew something was up. And now all the puzzle pieces connect together. And unfortunately, I have to kill myself for the sake of the entire kingdom. And his conscience is, he goes back to his tower in this sort of final scene. And maybe Axel and him did become friends. It's more interesting if they were friends. Because then there's actually emotional sadness when that happens.
Right. Well, there's a gap between when we went to the ball and when we came back and were summoned by the king, I think. So there's plenty of time for some sort of zany adventure where we become best buds.
Yeah, so Vero's body is the conduit to lead the demons come through, let the demons come through the portal. Doop. Axel has told him about the weirdness around him because they became friends over the massive length of time they were in the demon realm. Yeah. This was the final piece of information that Vero needed to discover what was happening to him. he decides to sacrifice himself to save the entire kingdom. And what I'm imagining in my head is Mayra, the king or the monarch, whatever, all gathered around his tower as he goes to do this. And they all sort of give this salute, and the music swells as Viro goes in. And as soon as he does the deed, which is off screen, the music becomes happy, and you can see sort of the grass around the tower spring back to life. And some of the trees had died throughout already, and they sort of start sprouting some leaves again.
Yeah, I've got some ideas about the visuals here that could tie in like objects or events or locations that we had talked about.
Yeah.
So this affliction, I think we know that the forest is repulsed by this castle, and we know that the castle is sort of visually blasphemous in some way.
Weird.
I'm one of my personal favorite tropes is a thing that looks like two things at the same time. And so this like blasphemous castle, what if it's also a lake of fire?
Oh, we needed a lake. You're right. And a history book.
Yeah,
so that's
right. So we've got this castle that's this disturbing image that is both a castle and then this stretched out lake of fire. And the black quartz forest is repulsed by this entity. And the symptoms that Viro has is that the quartz is growing out of him because it's trying to get out of its native plane, because the lake is coming for this one and it's just trying to get away. I love that.
There's parts of...
And so eventually it's like Viro will explode into this castle and become an instance of the castle in this plane of existence. Nice.
I love that. So there's parts of the black quartz growing out of the face because the trees are repulsed by the castle and lake?
Yeah, like they're escaping the plane that they come from. They want to get away from this castle so badly. And so they're coming through the planar veil outside and then like emerging from Viro's body because he's sort of the conduit for this. So
Viro's body is a conduit to let an instance of the castle come through the portal and appear on this side.
Yeah, I think so.
And
but then the history book is the...
Well, I have an idea for that.
Here.
So what I think is, since it is kind of a vague thing, and it's supposed to be vague, all the charts I made for this are supposed to be sort of intentionally a bit vague.
Totally.
So the history book is not the history we know, because we see at the end them adding the heroic acts of Viro to the new lexicon of information about the kingdom. So it's just
That's very cool. Okay, so is it then revisionist and my evil history is glossed over because of my noble sacrifice at the end, or what?
I would lean towards not, actually. But at least like there is a modicum of respect. You're given like a real send-off, even though... And we know people have minds of goldfish, but
oh, dang. So maybe then it's like the history is my depravity, right? It's all the evil things that I did, and I'm basically vilified in the history books.
Ooh.
But it's not the one that we know, because we saw that in the end, Viro had a change of conscience.
Oh, that's
said,
really good.
Don't gloss over the evil that I did in my life, but you people here know that I transcended that evil
awesome.
And made something better
See
in my
Mayor
life.
et al. Gathering around to give him a send-off. The plants start growing back once he does the deed. I've got to make the font a little smaller. I will zoom in on this.
Yeah. We wrote a lot.
Yeah,
so.
For a 30-minute game, this is like quite something.
Yeah.
Shit. We see way later, perhaps, a history book showing, or some, I don't know how we would visualize that, but showing that Viro is thought of as an evil person through and through. But we know that he found a way to come back to the light, as it were.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah. And in fact, part of his goodness is wishing that his goodness not become known and that he be allowed to be a bad example.
Right. That's awesome.
In history.
He's wishing that his goodness is not known, and he wants to be a bad example. Don't do what I did.
Right.
Cool. That's awesome. So we have run a little over, but that's fine. There's nobody here to like get on my case about it, because it's just me and you. All right. So
we make these rules.
I'm going to now read the thing from beginning to end,
cool.
as far as what we figured out. So the characters we had were the evil sorcerer Viro, who we now know has done a lot of evil acts throughout his life. We then have the thief, Axel. One of the locations that needed to exist, or the big location needed to be a lake of some sort, and the object is a history book, but not the history we know. Viro is researching... Sorry, I keep switching tabs. Viro is researching some horrendous evil in his tower. Axel comes in to steal something, like to sell, but is caught, and then the castle itself, or the tower itself, is beset upon by do-gooders, led by sort of a main heroine character, Mayra. We are... sorry, I'm reading this really weirdly, but Viro takes Axel into a not-quite-ready-yet plane-shifting portal pad thing, and they teleport so they can get away from Mayra. And they end up in a forest of trees made out of black quartz on some other plane of existence. Viro goes into a half-trance where he begins recording all the information about where they are. They are beset upon by some horned individuals in fancy dress. They are told, "You're here for the ball then," and led to this massive, strange castle that is, at the same time, somehow, a huge lake of fire. The forest is seemingly repulsed by this castle and this instance and keeps its distance. Inside of this castle at the ball, there's lots of weird music and a lot of other horned individuals. They appear to be the only human-adjacent people. After Mayra and her people stormed Viro's tower, they started having bad dreams showing all the trees dying, or rather, all the trees turning to black quartz, looking like the forest that we have seen with Viro and Axel. And it keeps spreading to people. These dreams keep spreading to people close to them, like their families, etc., and spreads throughout the kingdom. This affliction ends up being called the Dreams of Black Quartz. Viro and Axel get back from where they were, and they were at this other plane for a long time. Viro and Axel are back, and they are called to the monarch's place to account for what has happened. Axel, also, during this, has a secret. He noticed that tiny details about Viro are shifting, starting from the ball. And what this detail is that parts of these black quartzes are building, or like growing out of Viro's body. And Viro can't notice it until he is told by someone. He is eventually told by Axel, and this is the last piece of information that Viro needed to discover what is happening to him, because he has been recording all that information on the demon plane. Viro's body is the conduit to let an instance of the castle come through the portal and appear on this side, as well as, presumably, a lot of the quartz trees. He decides, probably in front of the king and Mayra, to sacrifice himself to save the entire kingdom. We see Mayra et al. Gathering around to give him a sort of send-off. The plants start growing back once he does the deed. Adding to this, he does also tell them, "I don't want to be remembered as a good guy. I want me to be a bad example because of all the evil shit I did." So we see way later that a history book is showing that Viro is thought of as an evil person that you shouldn't listen to, basically. He's a bad example. But we know, as viewers, that he had found a way to come back to the light. And part of his goodness is wishing that his goodness is not known, and he wants to be a bad example.
Cool. Damn. That was a solid story for 30 minutes.
So
awesome.
That is our awesome story, which we created in about half an hour. That was awesome. I loved that story a lot. We did go 15 minutes over, but I don't care. Eli, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was super fun. It was awesome to hear about what projects you're doing and I'm definitely going to look up that Old Gods of Appalachia. Creating that story with you was fun. It's been a long time since we have created a story together, so that was really awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. If you want to do a send-off or anything, but I think I'll hang up the call right as soon as you are finished and then give an outro for the show. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you having me on. This was a ton of fun. And it's a type of story that I never would have come up with on my own. And that's one of my favorite things about these story building games. I've got ideas that I want to carry forward into games and other things, so that's really cool. No, I just really appreciate it. Everybody who's interested in my stuff, there are links in the show notes there, so you can check them out there. If you want to follow me on Twitter @ZapDynamic, I tweet about games and occasionally, actually pretty quiet on Twitter, post about announcements on my games.
You sometimes you reply on Twitter.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm not much of a instigator. I'm more of a follow-upper. Anyway, yeah, that's me, and this is a really great time. Thank
you so much for coming on, Eli. I will talk to you later. See you later.
Sounds good.
And everybody, thank you so much for watching this second episode of Storyboard. Thanks for those of you who stuck around for the whole thing. Obviously, the VOD, video on demand, will be available on YouTube instantly, as well as a proper upload. It takes about a day on YouTube to do that. All the music used in this episode is by Tabletop Audio. Tabletop Audio is a really, really excellent service for music and ambiences and things. Check out Tim's stuff at tabletopaudio.com. The intro animation was created by Jeremiah Erickson, and the intro song was composed by myself. You can find all the information about projects that I'm doing in the show notes as well, or in the YouTube description. I do a bunch of shit. One thing I do want to point out is that I just released an industrial album under my industrial music project, Even Death May Die. You can find that on all streaming and purchasing music services. Do that. Yay. But that's about all I have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. That was super fun, and we hope to see you next week. My guest next week is Tim Harrison of HGC Fabrication. It'll be super fun. Hope to see you there. Bye.